Good morning and welcome all to today's webinar. I'm Aranza Zugalan, part of the editorial board of BUILTHUB. BUILTHUB is Europe's largest international portal for energy efficiency and renewable energy in buildings. It is a unique community that provides the opportunity to discuss, contribute, and collaborate with other experts on this field. BUILTHUB aims to bring together stakeholders working in the building sector to reap collective intelligence about energy reduction by encouraging knowledge exchange. Our editorial work is organized around the topic of the month, which allows us to go deeper into a specific theme. Each month, several items are produced as overview and technical articles and infographics, but not exclusively. BUILTHUB also offers the opportunity to host webinars on all the topics related to energy efficiency. More recently, BUILTHUB has opened the opportunity to distinguished experts in the field to share their knowledge in front of our cameras in the BUILTHUB Expert Talks. BUILTHUB shares daily the most relevant events in the field of energy efficiency and renewable energy, but also participates actively in many European events around the year as EPB Center and RIVA Conference, H2020 Interreg and Cost Action events, Covenant of Mayors, and much more, with the aim of further disseminating the results and helping to create high-quality media content. BUILTHUB is updated daily, reaching around 120 news items each month. But BUILTHUB is not only us. BUILTHUB is a community and we invite you to be part of it, becoming a member. You can contribute uploading your own content and promoting your own news, events, and publications. BUILTHUB will help you to reach a broader audience through our social media channels and newsletter. So today we have the pleasure to host the webinar entitled Leveraging our Standardization of Building Data Aggregation and Analytics, which is organized by the BIGG project and their sister projects MATRYCS, BIGG, and BUILTHUB. Now I give the word to Nerea Gómez, who is gonna explain the agenda and introduce the speakers. Thank you, Nerea.
Very good morning to all. My name is Nerea Gómez and I work as Project Officer at ECTP, the European Construction Technology Platform. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the BUILTHUB team for hosting and organizing our standardization session. I will quickly introduce the agenda. First, we will have the pitch of, unfortunately not for, 3 European projects, which are BIGG, BUILTHUB, and MATRYCS. I have to say that, well, we received a short notice that unfortunately Beyond won't be represented today, but we are looking forward to working and collaborating together among the projects. And then the main focus of this session will be the roundtable with different questions about standardization. The aim of this project is to identify the common session is to identify the common subjects and similar structures among the 4 projects, and well, identify those aspects that could help influence the standards, and also co-define together the founding principles of this community of standardization that we are founding. Now I will introduce the speakers. First, Maria Pérez Ortega, Innovation Program Manager at Inetum, who will be representing BIGG. Then Philippi Overegger Ulrich, Senior Researcher in the Energy Efficient Buildings Group at URAC Research, representing BUILTHUB. And then representing MATRYCS, we will have Vangelis Marinakis, Assistant Professor at the National Technology University of Athens. Maria, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Can you hear me well? Yes. Hello. So I'm going to present the BIGG project. Yeah, as Nerea was saying, and it was mentioned before, is one of the projects founded by the European Commission, and under a call that was related to how to capitalize from big data technologies on buildings in general. So in BIGG, as you can understand, the BIGG, it refers to the big data stuff, okay? What we do is try to capitalize on big data in terms of aggregation and harmonization of data in order to be able to achieve a better energy efficiency on the projects. And I think I have okay, let me try to move the slides. Okay, and there is a bit of delay. Okay. Okay, so as I was mentioned before, the idea of the project is to implement or to use big data technologies in order to increase the energy efficiency of those buildings. And when we are talking about big data and buildings, one of the strengths, let's say, of the project is that we are talking about big data. And when we talk about big data, it refers to more than 4,000 buildings all over Europe that are located in 6 different pilots or 6 different locations. I will introduce that a bit later. The main idea of the project, let's say we have 3 main areas of research and innovation. The first one is to be able to build a reference architecture for all the buildings data, which is very challenging due to the heterogeneity of data that you can have from a building. When we talk about building, we talk about the whole life cycle of the building, and we talk about internal data, external data, data from construction, data from materials, current data, historical data. The second challenge of the project is to get all that data and harmonize it in such a way that when it's harmonized, we can provide it to what we call a toolbox, which is based on artificial intelligence in order to be able to develop innovative services thanks to this harmonization and this integration of data that before is not possible. So we are trying to link data, to harmonize the data in order to be able to provide innovative services around buildings. And when I talk about this, the project was already thought or conceived in a way that we define use cases that are very realistic, real problems that they are now facing in the building management, and then we build up the technological solution, not the other way around. In this case, in this sense, we ensure that what we are doing in the project is serving to solve real problems. So there are 6 main business cases that we define at the beginning of the project, 3 of them located in Spain and 3 of them in Greece. And you can see them here. We are dealing with, from the benchmarking and the building portfolio management, energy certification of buildings, helping making decisions from renovating to from planning to renovation and dealing with the data around the buildings. We are also dealing with EPC contracts, especially in commercial buildings. We are also having some services related to the occupants of the buildings, optimizing the energy consumption of the buildings without disturbing the comfort of the occupants. And we are also talking about flexibility coming from residential buildings, both related to electricity and gas. So as you can see, there are very clear use cases, business cases that we have in the project. Which is the context. The context of the project, and I think that most of you know, let's say the energy consumed by the construction sector is significant. It's more or close to 40% in terms of final energy consumed. 75% of the buildings are still inefficient, and not only because of, let's say, we talk about the envelope of the buildings, but also inside the kind of consumption that we do in the building. So there is a lot of services and a lot of work that we can do in the buildings, in the building system in terms of energy efficiency. However, the data is so spread, is so different, is located in so many different databases, data lakes, that is very hard to really combine this data and to benefit from it in a smart way. So our solution in the project is to build this kind of standard, okay, being able to harmonize this data and then being able to deal with these difficulties. Right. Next slide. Okay. So just to let you know a bit what's the reference, the technical architecture of the project. It's a reference architecture. It means that one of the complexities of the project is that this architecture, which is commonly defined, must fulfill the different use cases in different locations with very different buildings. So the idea is that we need to be flexible enough. This architecture needs to be very, very adaptive, very dynamic, in order to be able to accommodate the difficulty, let's say the different use cases that we have in the project and more. So as you can see, we have considered from the beginning plenty of different data sources and data sinks. These are one examples that you can see in the layer above, but there are more. We are considering open data hubs. We consider private data hubs. We consider different schemas in which the data can be represented. So let's say we are very flexible. We need to be very flexible in order to be able to digest this data. We have built a layer of APIs that are able to collect this data in order for us to transfer it into the harmonization layer, which is the one in the middle. We harmonize this data based on a data model that we create, that I will explain later. And this data, once it's harmonized, then is ready to be given to an analytics toolbox, which is full of different services, different AI-based tools that are able to expose these services to solve the issues that we have. On the left side, we have a bunch of end user applications. In some cases, they are needed. In some cases, they exist. So in some cases, we transfer the data to existing user applications. In some other cases, as mobile apps, we are building them from scratch in the project. And then also, when we talk about data management, data of all types, we need to have a very strong security layer in order to ensure that data is well treated, well managed, and we are fulfilling GDPR compliant regulation and other type of regulations that we need to deal with. So we have some modules in order to ensure and to evaluate how we are processing the data. As I said, okay, everything is transferred, everything is, let's say, harmonized in a data model, which is called the big data model, but we are not, of course, reinventing the wheel. What we are doing is to get the different ontologies and the different standards that exist already in the market and are widely adopted. And what we are doing is to find the strengths of each of them and try to combine them. So one of our main, let's say, inputs is SAREF and the extensions of SAREF, but not only. We try to combine also some very good aspect that BIM, for example, has. We learn from other experiences, for example, from the United States related to BIDIS, which is very relevant, and there is nothing similar in Europe. Or, for example, data from the catastrophe, which is represented in Aspire. So what we do is that we build the data model, taking the best, let's say, piece and bytes and bits from all of these standards or existing ontologies in order to cover what we need. Two types of how to do this. Okay, first of all, as I said, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We try to align ontologies and we try to reuse as much as possible. So on the one hand, we have the data analysis. We need to identify the data characteristics. We need to find which ontology is able to cover that, define the data schemas, and then we go into the ontologies. We understand whether there are fields that are missing, properties that are missing, and if there is no ontology which is able to cover that, and then we create those type of fields. Okay, at the end, the idea is to be able to have on one data model all the data that we need from the buildings. And as I said before, we are very focused on the use cases. So in order to know how big or how we need to build this data model, first of all, we need to understand the data. We analyze the data, we analyze the data requirements that we have, the characteristics of that data, and then we identify the data needs. And then we look for the solution, existing solution, or how to combine existing solutions in order to create this data model. We are able to map the data into this data model, and then we evaluate this data model against the reality, understanding whether there are things that are missing, things that should be improved, or if we are able to get that data with no issues. All right, this is an example of the data model. I will not go into details because we don't have much time, But if you have questions or would you like to have more details about it, just let us know. Okay, and as I was saying before, first it comes the alignment of the data sources on the platform. Then we are doing this mapping into this data dictionary or data model, as we want to call it. And then what we do is to this data dictionary, we are aligning it into an ontology. And the expected impact is, let's say, is doubled in the sense that there is a certain impact that we can have in the project scope, which is to build this data model and to test it with the reference architecture, to be sure that the architecture is able to cover all the cases, is able to ingest all the data that we need, that we are able to run the use cases with this common data meaning, and that we have these services coming from this AI toolbox that we are building in the project. And beyond that, when the project is over, the idea is that we would like to contribute to standards, bringing this data model that we have built as a standard or as a suggestion of possible extensions of ontologies that could happen later on once the project is over. We know that the standardization takes time, and we would like to provide these suggestions for extensions to the different standardization bodies in order to have a midterm impact. Okay, and this is the list of the partners that we have in the project. We are 12 partners, okay, and as you can see, we have from research entities such as IMEC or ICTP or CSTB. We have private companies, large companies like Inetum, or we have ESCO companies such as Alexia. Cordia it's part of the Heron, of the NG group, as well as Heron, which is an energy retailer. And then we have, for example, representatives of the Catalan government with two institutions that are actually dealing with the management of the public buildings of the Catalan government. So we have a plan, you know, we have different roles and different profiles of partners in the project. And this is my last slide. So if you would like to get in contact, you have questions, please let us know. And I'm open to, you know, to anything that you need. Just let me know. Thank you. I don't know if I need to introduce the next one is BUILTHUB. Yeah, as Nerea presented, you know, we are going to present the 3 projects. So please, Ulrich.
Thank you. Good morning also from my side. So I'm going to give an overview of the BUILTHUB project and in more detail the standardization efforts we carried out in this project. So we start basically from the context that the building stock has to be decarbonized efficiently and effectively. To counteract climate change, we must guarantee energy security and combat energy poverty. And to evaluate policies that are able to do this, to accomplish this in the end, each member state needs to gather and analyze data about their building stock and related sectors. And as we heard also in the presentation before, currently this data is largely incomplete, unstructured, fragmented, and also difficult to access. And therefore, what BUILTHUB is doing is to inform and support efforts able to close these gaps, these data gaps, and to build a community around it. So basically, BUILTHUB is a coordination and support action. Therefore, it is a little bit above the other projects that are presented today. We are in the middle of the project, still 2 years to go. And so the main goals of this project are to develop a roadmap for a constant data flow to the European Building Stock Observatory. We've heard about it also in the previous presentation. So where the EU plans to store important data about the building stock, to create and engage a community for data collection and exchange. And what is specifically important today is to standardize data governance and services. And we are then testing these standardization efforts through our web-based BUILTHUB platform. And finally, of course, we are coordinating actions among associated projects. We have collected several data sets for our BUILTHUB platform, and these are basically in three groups. On the one hand, building stock related, on the other hand, socioeconomic data, and finally, climatic data. We have built a community to engage with. As you can see on this slide, the community started with a heavy contribution from academia, as they are very active in this field, and then we have a lot of different organization types in addition to that, and we have a well distributed community around Europe. And there are also some recent additions that where I put the logo on this slide to diversify the community even more. To diversify, we do constant networking and outreach, and also to define the use cases and understand what stakeholders need, and therefore develop services around it. And we collaborate therefore through different means: surveys, interviews, webinars, workshops, dialogues, etc., with the main entities working in these fields, such as Eurostat, Joint Research Center, concerted action for the different directives, the other big data projects in Horizon 2020, and other related projects as shown on this slide, and also working with initiatives and associations, some of which you can see also here represented through the logos. We also do some data analytics, and this is mainly to understand if what we are developing makes sense and can work by comparing and combining several data sets together. So the difficulty, as stated before as well, is to bring together very different data sets and to be able to do meaningful analytics with those data sets. And this typically requires a lot of harmonization, and then you need to make sure that you don't compare apples with oranges, so that you bring indicators on the same level and do meaningful comparisons. And you need to ensure also data quality and comparability. And finally, you can then deliver a service to the clients, to your customers, through the web-based platform. The BUILTHUB platform is therefore our testing, training, and evaluation playground. We are now close to going public. Here you can also see the link to the platform. It's not public yet, but will be soon, where we will then also carry out training. So we are now entering this exciting phase in the project, where we will then be able to train customers and to get their feedback about their platform, and through their hands-on experience, what they actually think about the data analytics we carried out and the data sets we collected, what is missing, what should be improved, and so on. So we also are developing a roadmap to guide basically on what should happen in optimally about 3-year time frame on different levels, from political to environmental. What should be done to allow sustained and therefore financially, economically viable data flow and continuous updates about the European building stock. So coming to the BUILTHUB standardization efforts more in particular, we have created in the web-based building data platform a standardized ontology, which basically means a controlled vocabulary for indicators and entities representing the data sets. with also a viewer that can be browsed by users. We have a data catalog with the data sets currently included in the database and metadata describing those data sets. So each data set has a set of metadata and database predicates, which means that, for each field in the data set, you get a detailed explanation and information about the cardinality, the data type, the possible predicates, an explanation with an example of the content, or the spatial and temporal classification, so that these data can then be reused in other data platforms. And users able to develop their own queries or to create their own queries can use a Sparkle editor. And there are some sample queries to understand a bit more how the data sets can be queried and filtered. There is also a dataset upload facility, which right now means that you can update existing data sets. It's not possible to upload a data set which is completely different from the ontology and from the transformations we are currently carrying out, as then the user would need to define or to communicate with us what the format of the data is. But if the data format is specified, and if another data platform has an API or a specified format, then this exchange and interoperability between our platforms is possible. There are 3 integration services on the platform, so we can use OData format integration for business intelligence software. We also have a REST API, and as said before, also the possibility to create own Sparkle queries. And on the right, you see what appears when you log into the platform, the help screen with some integration guides and some videos then helping customers through this process to understand how to use the integration services. And then there is also a user manual that if the videos need some, or if a customer needs additional information in addition to the videos, can be used the user manual as well. So with that, I come more to the end of my presentation with some open questions. So there are some standardization challenges periodically coming up. One is about or considering that data sets are very heterogeneous, which requires that we build a custom BUILDHUB ontology on top of existing ones. So this issue of then bringing together all the harmonization efforts from the different projects and creating a big ontology as much as possible compatible with the ontologies created in the different projects. And what stakeholders also often ask is which standards should they follow, as several standards are competing against each other. And as an example, I put here the Data Spaces Business Alliance formed by several previous standardization efforts. And there is also the International Building for Performance and Data Initiative developing a common data model for the real estate sector. And this is my last slide with content. So I've identified some needs and recommendations from the work we've done in the past, in the last 2 years. So there is a need for a standardized building stock characterization ontology, whereas there is much more on single building level through, for example, building information modeling and other schemas existing like BRIGG, Haystack, IFC, SAREF was mentioned. So there is much more on single building level, but not so much on building stock level for the different NATS or LAO levels. And of course, we are trying to follow EU directives as much as possible, while being, let's say, as much as possible, again, compatible with existing building schemas and industry-specific standards. And so therefore, what's most needed is to then also provide guidelines and templates for the data value chain, from gathering of primary data to publishing the data according to the proposed ontology. So there, stakeholders such as energy agencies or national statistics institutes need help. They need to know how should they start with data gathering, how should they then proceed to publish their data such that the existing ontologies or the ontologies we propose can be used. And I close with the consortium. So in all these projects, I'd say we have a healthy mix of research institutions and companies dealing with a big data on a daily basis, and of course, dissemination, communication, and stakeholder engagement part. So yeah, I'm looking forward for the roundtable and your questions.
Yeah, about MATRYCS, I'm Vangelis Marinakis from the National Technical University of Athens, and I will try to present a few things about MATRYCS. We already discussed it before. Data is everywhere, and it is expected to play more and more a key role in the building sector. So MATRYCS aims to capitalize and combine modern technologies around machine learning, deep learning, data harmonization, and of course, big data in order to develop new decision-making and data analytics solutions for energy efficient buildings. We built our approach around three key questions: who can provide or consume data, what data are being collected, and how are data collected, managed, and made available for use. In terms of who can provide data and who can use and consume the data, we define four key pillars: performance, design, policy, and fund, as we can see in this slide. In each of these pillars, we address different problems around the building sector. And we define 11 large-scale pilots. In these pilots, we involve different stakeholders like national and local governments, network operators and suppliers, ESCOs, building managers and facilitators, construction and renovation sector, investors, policymakers. So an important asset for our project is the user-oriented approach in designing the MATRYCS reference architecture and all the components, bringing representatives from all these groups, even from the consortium synthesis. So we cover the interest of relevant stakeholders within the building value chains, covering the whole life cycle of buildings, from the product manufacturing to the operation and maintenance, and also policy making and research. Buildings are also considered from different perspectives and scales, like buildings as individual elements to their aggregation at different scales. In terms of what data are being collected, we have already identified different data repositories from our pilots. A summary is also provided in this slide. This data can be combined with other open data sources, including public, EU, national, and regional repositories. So all provided data leads to the definition of the common data model. We already discussed it in the previous project about common data models. So in MATRYCS, we integrate 7 vocabularies like firmware, EPC4EU, data models, and ontologies like SAREF, and also 11 different schemas like building energy performance certificate, energy consumption, and more. So we need one moment to, okay. So we need a standardized way to collect, manage, and analyze large volume and varieties of both real-time and historical data, and create added value services for the stakeholders in the building sector. This has been addressed by matrix governance, matrix processing, and matrix analytics layers. These layers are the main part of the matrix reference architecture. Of course, beyond ensuring that the architecture and all the requirements identifying the pilots, additional effort has been dedicated to the alignment of the proposed architecture with already existing architectural schemas and framework like BDVA reference model, the Alliance for Internet of Things Innovation High-Level Architecture, FireWare, OpenDay, or Bridge Reference Architecture, and data spaces. We also exploit EGI infrastructure to develop the matrix reference architecture and the relevant components. EGI is an Horizon 2020 project delivering a distributed federated compute infrastructure. So this is a real example how it is possible to develop industrial-oriented applications based on the EGI infrastructure, creating new added value business opportunities with a particular focus in the building sector. And developing all these components and the relevant services for the pilots, we have delivered a number of pre-training, generic, or matrix-specific machine learning and deep learning models for energy-efficient buildings. This include digital twins or real-life applications through a number of services. For instance, models are tailored to energy forecasting for different time horizons, building consumption forecasting using a number of variables, and all these are parts of services for like better management of self-production systems or for efficient and optimal balancing of energy vectors, for building automation and control of this other performance pillar that we said before. Under design pillar, we have services for assessment and optimization of refurbishment options, or to design and develop the district heating network and optimize its operation. Under the fund pillar, we have services related to energy performance contracts and in general the evaluation of energy efficiency investments or refurbishment actions in the building stock at local level. And under policy pillar, we have services related to energy performance assessment and certification, or decision making and data analytics solutions at city level, different models from the buildings. One other important aspect for our project is the creation of the Big Data Alliance. This is a community to leverage project results visibility and to create a new ecosystem where we will be able to discuss about buildings and big data. The Big Data Alliance is a running, structured, collaborative space for selected or active stakeholders that together will try to solve practical challenges around the building life cycle management. So already we have some members, and of course this structure is open for new members to participate in the upcoming activities of the MATRYCS Big Data Alliance. And finally, we are collaborating with other initiatives in the standard ecosystem, as we can see in the table, and also MATRYCS is representing its results in different contexts, also outside the normal EC-funded project ecosystem, including relevant initiatives and actions, as we can see through the summary of the logos. So thank you very much. This is an overview about the MATRYCS activities, trying to address also some standardization aspects. Of course, later in the round table, we can see in more details all these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all the
Thank you very
speakers. And now we will, well, the roundtable will start. So I would like to thank the panelists and also the people who is joining now the roundtable. It will be Guillaume Pizzambono from, well, he's being activity manager at CSTV, Abel Muñoz Alcaraz, solution specific knowledge leader at Entity Data, and Francesco Saverio Nucci, application research director at Engineer R&D Labs. And now I will give the floor to Arantzazu Galan, the moderator of the roundtable. Thank you.
Thank you, Nerea. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for this very inspiring and very interesting presentation, high-level presentation, in fact, that we here in BuildUp, we are really fond of having this kind of webinars with us. Please feel free for all of you to respond or to answer, although I assigned the questions to more or less each of you, but feel free to contribute so we can see the different aspects, because what has seemed very interesting is how your different point of view of the data gathering and how to harmonize, as Nerea was explaining before and Maria was explaining, how to harmonize it for a common standardization so we can all use it in our projects. So let's begin, for example, with Guillaume. How the outcomes of a project should be pushed to standardization could be identified?
Well, we start with a quite interesting question. I mean, that's not an easy one, because standardization is a very specific field. It's a very specific process. It's most of the time is quite long, time-consuming, and designing a new standard and being adopted is more like 10 years long, and most of the time it's not compatible with the scope and the timing of a project. But this is very, very important, and we should definitely have more standardization effort in each European project, because it's, to my point of view, this is what it's about to develop a European project. It's not only to develop something in the scope of the project, but make sure that it will be used by other projects or by other people in other scopes. So this is why in BIGG, and I think that in other projects also, we now have specific tasks on standardization. So it's part of a one package. So this is a task I'm responsible for. And definitely we spend time thinking of how we will improve standardization. And that's one of the questions we have. What is a project going to push to standardization? Of course, the project has many outcomes. We will produce, mostly of all the things we have promised in the proposal. So a large number of them, at least. But we definitely have to think. We can't do everything for standardization. So we have to focus on the most important one, and also the one we are able to push to standardization. So definitely we have to think about what could be useful outside the scope of the project and what could be mostly generalizable to other concepts. Well, when it comes to information technology and BIM-oriented project, because we are all in this scope today, well, they are classical thing we could push to standardization, and we've seen from the presentation here that one of them, and I think the most important, is about data models. There are BIM data models today. There are big data models also, and technologies. But all our three projects presented here have developed their own central reference. I like, because every project has the same reference data model. So we have a big reference data model, and there's a MATRYCS reference data model. That's very interesting, and that's that's why we are here today. It's really identifying what in this data model we have, what we are adding to what it's existing, and this is very important that we do it also together. But that will be on another question. But so there's data model, and definitely there's data processing and data analysis. We are all in this scope, and I think that's the main area where we should contribute to standardization. There's one last, and I'll let the floor to the other speakers, but one last thing. Well, I quite discovered because I didn't know it existed. It's about the use cases. You've seen, and we have seen that all our projects are based on use cases. We start from use cases to design data model and to see what data we are going to use. And Building Smart, which is responsible for some standards, BIM standards like IFC, has developed an initiative that's quite interesting to standardize and publish use cases. It's called the Use Case Management Platform. And every project, and that's very interesting because all our projects start with that. So it should be a generic process to, when we start a project, to see if someone has not already standardized a certain kind of use case. And if so, we use it. And if not, you can develop it and then contribute to this platform. That's exactly the scope. But I let also the other people answer this question.
Thank you very much, Guillaume. Yeah, in fact, I will talk with Abel because in BUILDHUB you are already gathering a lot of a big consortium around you. You have to work, so you have all this data. So perhaps you are very aligned with this question too. Have you seen which projects or identified these outcomes to push them in this direction?
Yes. For me, the most important is not the technical aspect. We are all working in European projects, and the European projects, the standardization is the core. We start from the beginning using standardization. But it's very important to identify the standardization of the value that we generate to all our customers, to all our clients. A standardization with a value, with an added value for the rest of the European Commission, the European people, I think it's not useful. But this is the key point for our projects, to get value in a standardized way. We can use very known platform, very known tools, like, for example, protocols like SDMX, in order to give a statistic information or what they need, or using reference architecture, European interoperability reference architecture, in order to create our own architecture to be sure that we are aligned with the rest of the projects in the European Commission. And the most important, be conscious that we are going to have cross-border problems with different member states, and how to solve it, ensuring that we are going to accomplish different legal aspects, like the single digital gateway, for example. This is very important in this context.
Absolutely. Here, I will also ask Vangelis or Francesco, what do they think from the MATRYCS project? Have you identified while working? You are beginning with the project, but have you already identified this need?
Yeah,
Francesco,
absolutely.
for example.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you for the question, and this is absolutely I agree that one of the important points is to starting from the use case, also to identify the needs and the data. This is I agree with Guillaume, and as you have seen, we have many use cases, so it's quite complicated. Also inside our project, because we have 11 large-scale pilots, so you can understand that the possibility to identify the needs is coming from these use cases. I think that it is important to. I would like to stress two aspects. The first one, as probably you know, we can consider when we talk about standard, we should consider the de facto standard and the de jure standard. So I think that in our community we should work on both aspects. And naturally, we have already seen that there is a lot of effort put also in the European community to define the US standard, and we have this kind of standardization. But it's important, as Abel mentioned this, that we should create value with the standard. And this is we can do this also in not just in a top-down approach, but also in a bottom-up with, let me say, the de facto standard. And this is very important when we talk about our community. I mean, and I think that this the idea to have these sister project communities is important in order to define also the de facto standard. Why I say this? I think that I would like to say something even more of Abel. We discuss about technology. Now we are a technology project, but I think that the most important thing for this challenge is the people. It's not the technology. I am a technical person. My background is on artificial intelligence. I started to study. I am a mathematician, a computer science, but I think that it's very important the people. Have the people in the loop and the, let me say, education of the people to use the standard, to share the data, and so this can be done with the standard, and so facilitate and create value when you share data with the and so will be easier to demonstrate that standard are useful. So again, at the end of our effort, at the end of our in the loop. At the end of the day, in the loop, it's important to have people and to convince people that it's important to have standard. And this is something that I think in this kind of project, in this kind of community, we can try to have.
Francesco, I think you are very aligned with our audience that are already talking about where is the user here. So you are beginning the conversation. You said that you have a lot of large case uses. What is, I believe, a must, no? When you have a standardization, you have to test a lot. You have to. These are rules that everybody's gonna follow, and that will lead us to the next question for you. That is this sister project community that you have created. That first, I will love that for the BUILDUB community, you to explain a little bit what is it about, and how will it improve the impact on the standardization? And here, for example, I have Francesco first, but I can go for Ulrich, for example, for Philippi, to begin with this question, and then we go back to Francesco.
Yeah, as I said in my presentation, so I mean, first of all, I completely agree with what has been said. So the focus on use cases and the end users and then also the public, so to instruct the public to educate on the importance of using standards. And as I mentioned in my presentation, we are developing our own common data models in each project, and then the challenge will be to push together, to join these efforts, to push together for what we think is most important to characterize the building stock. So how do we, starting from the single building, how do we aggregate to larger communities, from the single building to the building cluster to the energy community, and then going to a district level and so on. So we need different characterization, different descriptions of the data collected for these different levels. And we then in the end also need to guide those collecting the data that in the end are going to be processed. We need to guide them so that they collect the data already in the right format and bring it together in the right format, so that we, I think it's very important that we work together to identify the right indicators and the right standards to use, and then agree on the right, formats and ontologies, vocabularies. and then to just communicate as much as possible and get feedback from stakeholders, from the public, if what we are doing is in the right direction and where we should adjust our direction.
Great. It is important that this sister project community have projects that have different visions for data. I mean, it's from the very technical one, some of you have to as Francesco was saying, to the final user, or the final user of the data, but also the final user, for example, of the building itself. It's important, or it's better to have an homogeneous approach to this standardization. And there I will go for Francesco, for example, that has already advanced a little bit the topic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that it's important to have as possible different kind of people in the community. Absolutely, different kind of approach. I agree with you that the end user, the utilization of the building, but even the citizen. I mean, it's important to have them in the loop. This is, I think this is absolutely true, and naturally, it's easier to talk with similar people. And we will we discussed about ontology. I anticipate, because this is also another question, but I would like to stress the fact that naturally it's easier to talk with similar people, but we need to try to enlarge our community also with external people, with different kind of people. And we should understand, and maybe we should define a common terminology, not just ontology. We will discuss this later on, but absolutely is important. And this, in this sense, I think that sister project community can play a very important role. And you know that the European projects sometimes is too. I mean, working just alone. I mean, the project to start and end at the beginning and the end of the project, and there is no relationship with others, external interaction, and also with the projects or similar projects interaction. We need to improve this aspect, because in the past, for many years, I think that this is a single project is a monad, and this is not easy. I would like to say that so events like this are very important, but I think also that the physical interaction, because I stress the fact that important, the people are important in this challenge, and the people are, I mean, are not digital. We are up to now not still digital. We are true, and we are physical, and so we need to interact. And in MATRYCS, we have a good experience, including the social housing, some social housing organization that are in the loop, and so we participate in some events, and this is very important. In coming back to the beginning of your question, is very important, because these people are not so common in the European projects, and this is a very good value for MATRYCS, but I think also in a community like this one.
Yeah, it's in fact something that we are trying to do lately, that is break the silos, right? Because we work like in cocoons sometimes, and afterwards we kind of not communicate. So making this community, I think the word community is outstanding for your projects. It's very strong word, and takes a lot with it. And here I will ask Guillaume, because BIGG is harmonizing, right? Is your big word. You're harmonizing all the time. So you're nothing without a community there, I believe.
That's exactly, and that's why it's very important to have this kind of event. And honestly, it's in another European project that just finished that I discovered this idea of sister projects. I knew there were, but that's a bit strange. We were sometimes even adversaries, or well, against each other. So because we were fighting in the same call and so on. But I discovered how important it would be to share what we have, to discuss at least. And there are many possibilities, and yeah, of course, to harmonize, because we will have much more impact if 4 European project goes to standardization with the same idea, with the same goal, and this is of course. And there are also many other things we could do together. I've seen some organizing in some domain conference. If you are alone, well, you just be presenting one article or two. But if you go as a community, you can ask for a specific workshop on the subject of our, and that's much more impact. That's much more diffusion, and that's a real way to push and to show people what we can do, each of us and all together. And that's very important, I think.
This perhaps leads us very, very easily to the next question, no? Because Guillaume, how you see an European project impacting in the standardization committees? How can we make an impact there? It's very difficult.
That's again a good and quite challenging question. We definitely, well, I'm a lot working with standardization committees in my today's work. So I'm contributing specifically with Building Smart on IFC standard and so on. So I know quite well how it works, but that's some aspect, and that's a very long, like I said, it's a very long way to define a standard and to move it and to make it accepted and so on. So it's not always easy to do that really good in a European project. But with BIGG, we started, we tried at least to put a real methodology about that. And we defined that a European project has several phases, and during all these phases, you should be able to relate to standardization. For example, at the very beginning, you are considering use cases. So first of all, you should look if other people if some standards use cases are existing and use them. But during this use cases analysis and specification phase, this is where you are looking. You will be looking for existing standards. Okay, I need a data model about building and other aspects. What's on the market, and you should at least identify and try to understand them. Then you will make your choice for the project. You will choose to develop a reference data model, like we all did. And there's a second phase here where you may need help from standardization experts. So that's not only identifying, but then you need to go to the standardization committee to ask people, okay, I have this use case. I would like to use one part of your data model. How can I do? Or explain me exactly how it works. And then if everything goes well, you will have the very last phase. That's a more difficult one, where you have developed your solution, and you have been going forward with this data model. You have improved the data model, or extended the data model, or simply corrected the data model that had issues. And then you will go back to standardization, and that's a real push to standardization, saying, okay, that's what I'm suggesting. The difficult part here is that you will be able to suggest something to push that, but it will be mostly at the end of your project, and your project will end. So that's a tricky part, and maybe that's also one strength of such a community, that we, when some projects are going to an end, they could push to other projects that are still going on, and have some kind of iterative, because as I said at the very beginning, it took around 10 years to develop a standard, and our project are only few years. So we definitely have to try to have an ongoing community on certain subject if we want really to push them to standardization.
very interesting, the 10 years standards. It's a little bit crazy, right? That we are running also quickly for targets and standards keep kind of in slow mode, right? Francesco, how you see from MATRYCS these standardization committees? For example, do you think that they will have to be, here in the question is approach and contribute, but perhaps they have to be more open because European projects are big testers, big testers on the field that can provide a lot of information, and perhaps they have to be a lot more open. So they reduce also the time that we have to reach the goals, so they can reduce the time for standardization, perhaps. How do you see it from MATRYCS?
Yeah, my attitude, and also maybe also the MATRYCS attitude, is to be open. Absolutely, I think this is produce value for the project, and so so for the first part of the question, absolutely yes. I think that I mean, generally speaking, I believe in open innovation. I'm from a large company, so we are I mean, dedicated to business, but I think that the open innovation can create a lot of value also for the company, for the profit company, not just for the university or non-profit research organization. So again, I think this is important. About the reduced, I'm not so expert to. I understand that this problem to have 10 years to produce a standard is also, at the best of my knowledge, this is I mean, the timing for a good standard, and even more. I don't know if we can reduce with European projects. Maybe yes. I was, but let me say that I mean, I was very interested in the Guillaume approach, and this is because, to be honest, it's not easy. In my experiences, we have many projects in engineering in my company, but also in my lab, and sometimes we have good experiences for standard, but it's not easy in the European project, in my experiences. And I think that the fact that Guillaume has this personal experience in standard that I haven't, for instance, committee, is important for the project, I think. And so I really appreciate the methodology that Guillaume suggested. And I think that we need this kind of people inside the partnership in the projects. It's not easy. Sometimes we have the standard, because standard is a strange. You know that in a project you have the technical people, the state of the art, the researcher in one side. Then there is a system integration or I mean use case people. Use case, and then we have communication people, dissemination, exploitation. Often the standardization is inside the communication, but I think it's not the right person there, because communication people are people can communicate in events or for the general people and something like that, newspaper, press agency, and so on. Instead, standard is something different. So I think it's even difficult to allocate the standard task. Usually there is a task. And so I don't know if Guillaume has some experiences on that, but again, this is one of the difficulties that we have, because we will, I would like to stress also the problem, not just the good value in discussing the standard, but also the problem. And this is in my experiences, one of the problem. So I appreciate, again, say the life cycle for the standard starting from the beginning. I think this is I will try to duplicate this in my project, in my proposal. Sorry, Guillaume, you see.
That's what it's meant for. I think that could
we are learning a lot.
That could be one achievement of such a community. I mean, I'm an expert on IFC, but I'm not an expert in every standard. So probably in your project, you have experts on other standards we are interested in, and we could join on this effort. I know how to go to building smart committees and to meetings, and we participate quite often. and most I think you in your project have also access to some standardization, but because it is one important that not all these communities are easy to access. You have to join to start participating, and that's again that's a long way.
Yeah. Now, in MATRYCS is a quite large project with a lot of partnerships, so we have these people. But in my experience, it's another project, no, because it's maybe a project with people from the university and from the business, but with minor experience in the committee for the standard. And this is this is not the case of MATRYCS, but in other projects I've seen these difficulties, and yeah, it's not easy, but okay.
Very interesting to see that there are things that that it continue to appear during the project. I see a very good path for all of you. Finally, we go to Abel. You put the word ontology in our screen, and I have to show you this very important question for all of us. It's like, how can we collaborate among the projects to co-develop a common ontology?
No, I think that the answer of this question has been told before in the presentation. The most important point is don't reinvent the wheel. Use a common standard and build on top of them is the most important. And another way very important is to use a common methodology. There are a lot of ontology development methodologies like ontology development 101, the new Neon, and many others. But in a more easy way, summarize, we must use a development ontology life cycle, starting with which is the purpose of the ontology. First of all, the second step is, okay, we are building a community. Which is the interest of each part of the community, and create their own understanding, their own context. But it's not required to have knowledge about ontologies, only a text, a document in text in order to describe their needs. For example, in BUILDHUB, we create the indicators, one of the most important parts in the BUILDHUB ontology, using mind map tool in order to organize, to arrange that indicators. And it's the most important part of the ontology. After that, okay, implement the ontology. Join all these ideas and implement the ontology. Use one standard. ISCAOS, OWL, or a well-known language. And of course, and very important, maintain that ontology. An ontology is not a thing, it's a product. You need to maintain the first version of your ontology. It's not going to use to nothing. When you incorporate people and you do several iterations about the creation of the ontology with different teams, with different projects, with different people working together in order to increase, to improve that ontology, you are going to have a real standard ontology. The other way, what you have is a home ontology, maybe.
Really interesting, Abel. Ulrich, also from BUILDHUB, what is your vision? Because you are is entity data and URAC as a researchers. How do you see ontology from your participation in BUILDHUB?
Yeah, of course, we work strongly together in BUILDHUB, so I completely share what Abel just said, that the life cycle is what we are trying to achieve. So an ontology life cycle, which also means that we are proposing through the roadmap, which will be one of the outcomes of the project. We are proposing how in the future the collection of building stock data should be organized, which means that BUILDHUB in the end produces a roadmap with some guidance, but we also have a platform that acts like a funnel for transferring data to the building stock observatory. So we would like to explore and then suggest, give recommendations on how to guide in the end data providers, data gatherers in this process. And so we start with, okay, what do we need from above? So from, let's say, European Commission side, and what do the member states need to do? What are their tasks? Down to the single entities that collecting the data, like for example, a National Statistics Institute, or maybe a local energy agency doing some surveys to single people, and those then need to collect the data and need also to answer or fill in forms in the right way. So to make this work, as Isabel said, we start with, okay, what is the purpose? What are the needs of each part in this process? What indicators do we need in the end to describe the building stock and to know how to, for example, renovate the building stock? How much does it cost? What renovation actions are the best ones, and so on. And then translate this into also the technically, let's say, rigid documents that need the precision, the accuracy required to guarantee interoperability. And then, yeah, it's an iterative process. So in the end, you then collect feedback to produce the next version. And this is, I mean, what the different initiatives, the two that I put on my slides, but there are several others, what they are doing to come up with a common data model. But the big work indeed is understanding with the people involved what they need and how they describe data, what is the meaning behind the data. So understanding first the context and the content of the data we are collecting, and the meaning of the analysis and services developed, and from this then you can develop the technical documents and the standards. And then last but not least, I mean, what Francisco said, that in the end we need to then engage with the standardization organizations and to I mean, bring forward our proposal. Otherwise it's just kept somewhere but cannot really take off.
Great. And just to conclude the roundtable, to Guillaume and Francesco, so your sister projects for BUILDHUB, because it has been BUILDHUB who has addressed the word ontology specifically on their presentation, but I believe that you are already co-developing this common ontology. Perhaps some briefs of how it is helping you in your projects to your specific targets, this common ontology. Guillaume, for example.
Well, I'm not sure I understood. No, we didn't really collaborate so far but that will be the goal. I mean,
okay.
If from my point of view, well, if we had built this community at the very beginning of our project, we could have analyzed together our use cases and see what the similarity is, and try to co-develop some part of the ontology. Well, that's not the case in the scope of this community, but what we can do, and what we already did in another project was, well, I think we all have ontologies or part of ontologies, and we could gather them or try to join them. I mean, they are not doing all exactly the same thing. We should have, quite sure we will have some common concepts in there. So definitely it will be very interesting to try to connect this concept and to join this concept and to define very important one. And then our ontology could be extension of each other's, and then it would be possible probably to suggest at the end something that the union of our ontology and that could address more globally the scope of our projects. And I think that could be a good, I mean, from my point of view, from a standardization task, it could be a good achievement to have tried to have this effort to join our ontology, or at least to compare and join our ontology, and maybe made some common publications, for example, white papers or articles, and then propose that to standardization.
Very interesting. It seems a good way to communicate afterwards with a less technical audience or target audience, I believe. And finally, Francesco, your views on this?
Yeah, no, we started to work together with the ontology. I'm not so deeply involved in this part of the project as coordinator, but as you have seen in the presentation of Vangelis, we started to define the ontology inside the project for the, I mean, again, 11 large-scale pilots, we definitely need this. And I think that we are also in contact with the sister project, with the more general community about this common ontology. So this is, I mean, naturally, something more can be done, but I think this is a good starting point also for this aspect. And again, at the beginning, I mentioned the fact that when you have the ontology, naturally, it's important for this aspect of data. But in a community, it's also important to, even the terminology is important. And when we have told that we need to interact with different kind of people, and in my speech, another times when you have the user, there is also some terminology that it's different. So it's even more than just a common ontology, also a common terminology. But
yeah,
good. I mean, for MATRYCS and this community is good. The value added is a good experience, it's a good practice in my experiences. Maybe because we are not so many projects, we are not 20 projects, we are just 4, and so it's possible to discuss. And naturally, everyone has the first goal is to work for the project and to pass the review, and you know. And so we are dedicated to the project. Is dedicated. The consortium is the first goal is dedicated to this. But at the end of the day, these lateral aspects are also important, and maybe also for the review, because you demonstrate that you work together.
Well, so thank you very much to all of you for this roundtable. Now, if we have 5 minutes more, let's open to our audience that have some questions going on here in my right-hand side. You will see that they are also linked to your own projects, not only to standardization, as today was a very good way to present what you are doing also in the core of your projects. So let's begin with the first one that it says, is there any smart, efficient building without the smart and informed users? So, Francesco?
Can you repeat? I don't understand what is the question about smart building.
Is there it says, is there any smart or efficient building without the smart and informed users?
You mean a smart building without smart users?
Exactly.
I think that. I mean, first of all, a smartphone, a smart building, we should define an ontology or a terminology to understand what means smart, naturally. But it's clear that in one side we need to work for the people, not for the building. I mean, the building is just how important because they are used by the people. But and so it's important to have smart people there. But at the same time, I think that we need to work for everyone, not just for people that are already digital and digital attitude. No, is you know that now if you see the digital born, my kids are very smart in using the mobile, but the building are for all, not just for this kind of people. So I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, I believe our audience is always putting the stress on the user, as we were saying before, no? Because sometimes, well, projects fly a little bit high, and they are eager to know how it gets to the final user, no? By the way, you all can answer if you feel inspired by the questions, because there are no assigned questions in any case. So do anybody wants to say something about these smart users?
Yeah, this is Vangelis. In general,
Hi.
all these smart buildings, smart cities concept, I think our target is not to build a smart building or a smart city, but our target is to achieve well-being and how the user can feel better and sustainable. So our target is to achieve well-being, and smart buildings and all these technology standards is the way to achieve well-being. So I think this is really important, that all these, exactly, all these activities, technologies, everything, the target is to achieve well-being for the end user, to feel better and more comfortable.
This next question is addressed to the BIGG and BUILTHUB project. It says, do BIGG and BUILTHUB projects also consider data on building demolition in terms of the reuse or recycling?
Yeah, maybe I start on that one. We are having a task specific on building construction and demolition waste reuse. So again, collecting the right data and then bringing it together in a harmonized format and doing meaningful analysis of the data is a crucial part of the job. And of course, we start with first analyzing, okay, what are the needs? So the needs might be to understand, is it what is environmentally more impacting? So is it more impacting to, as a simple example, demolish and rebuild, or to reuse as much as possible the existing building fabric? And if I mean, ask in this way, then everyone would probably agree that the more you reuse what you already have should be environmentally more friendly. But then if you go into detail, it becomes much more complicated than that, because reusing means doing a lot of processing to come back to a usable product. So in the end, it's much more complicated than that. And to bringing together, what we are doing is bringing together different data sets and analyzing what data is available. How much does it cost to do demolish and reconstruct the building? What is the environmental impact? We are looking at this to understand, okay, what is in the end the real potential for reusing materials and being environmentally more friendly, but also cost effective. And then often it turns out that it's not easy at all. To be, I mean, environmentally friendly, even with reusing and cost effective with reusing materials. So it's a big challenge.
Big project doesn't address this reuse and unbuilding of the buildings, but at CSTB we do work on this aspect, of course, and it's a very important one for circular economy, and that's, I totally agree with it's a huge challenge. And today the main challenge is that the building we are destroying are old one, obviously, or most of the time, so we don't know much about them, and it's very difficult to acquire the data of the component of a building that's very old. So that's how challenge today. We can imagine that in the future, with building that has been built using IT and using BIM, it will be a lot easier and much more efficient. Today we are still trying to prove that's efficient. But well, we think that's efficient. I mean, the idea is very good, and we should definitely go to this way. But today it's very challenging.
I have another question from the same person, quite interesting one. It's general. She wants to know what you think about allocating a specific time in the Gantt chart for publishing and standardizing the research outcomes.
I vote for it.
Good question.
That's exactly what I'm trying to do in our project, and also in my job, in my 2 days job. I would like to have time and money specifically for standardization. But some people think that standardization is not research or innovation. I totally disagree with that, because for me it's the goal of innovation. It's to go to that, to standardization. But it's quite difficult to have, and it's quite difficult today to make a big budget on that on a European project. That's what we managed to do in big project. We have quite a good budget for that. Let's hope that we will fulfill the the deliverable, and that will be successful at the end.
Just a comment, as Guillaume said, in the project we have this task. So it was already foreseen when we prepared the proposal. It's true that the project, in terms of, 3 years long, it needs to pave the way. Okay, but it's true that in that sense, I think it's one of the key results that we can have from the projects, not only technical but also these contributions to standardization. So I think it's a good idea. I think it's something that the Commission really pushed for, to consider this type of standardization, collaboration among projects, going together to standardization bodies. I mean, for me, as coordinator, is one of the, let me say, selling points when you go to the evaluation, right? And I think it's very, very well seen by the reviewers. So I would say yes, it's something that you should include actually in your proposal.
So if we're done, it's already 12, so I will leave the floor to Nerea to do a recap. Thank you very much from the BUILDUB part. It has been uberly interesting to talk with all of you, and hope to see you in the future. Thank you.
Yes, well, just to wrap up, I just wanted to thank all of you. First, the audience, of course, for having joined us today in this session, and of course, all of our panelists for such a quite interesting discussions. So thank you very much, and looking forward to continue collaborating together in this standardization community.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye. You.